I'd like to call to order the City of Saugatuck City Council Workshop Meeting for August 6th. If the clerk could please call the roll.
Anderson, Clark,
Here.
Dean,
Here.
Parker,
Here.
Here, Peterson. Here. Stan.
Here. And if I could, yes, we have a quorum. Could I have a motion to excuse Mayor Anderson? She is on vacation.
I'll make a motion to excuse Mayor Anderson due to her vacation plans.
I'll second.
All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes. And moving on to agenda changes. Any agenda changes for today? All right, moving on to public comment on agenda items only. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to make a comment in the audience. All right, if there's anyone online, Jamie, do you see anyone with their hand raised?
I do not.
All right. We'll move on to the approval of minutes. Could I have a motion? Yes.
Madam Mayor, Madam Pro Tem Mayor.
Pro Tem Mayor, yes.
I move that we approve the regular city council meeting minutes as submitted for July 28th, 2025.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, this is a voice vote. Any discussion? Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to discussion items for today. Item 6A, our holiday lighting. Scott Herbert, would you like to take this?
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
They been working quite a bit with a lot of our electrical contractors and Consumers Energy and just trying to get the best information available for you guys to consider when we talk about holiday decorations. So it shockingly got a little more complicated than what I had hoped. So if you need clarification on anything or if you want to ask me any questions during this, by all means, feel free. So, you know, we started off, we were at the tail end of a 3-year contract with Chips Ground Cover. That contract is up for renewal. Nick Weaver, who owns Chips Ground Cover, I think Chris, you worked with Nick
Yeah.
Extensively in the past.
Every tree.
Every tree. They've done a really great job for us. And this, the holiday lighting that we have out there, you know, we've changed styles over the past. We used to have snowflakes in the canopy. The tree canopy got too big. So we came up with tree wrap lights. There are a lot of details about, you know, which color white bulb was acceptable. We decided warm white. We even discussed in such detail in the past about how big the gaps would be in between the light strands as they're wrapped up the tree. So this has just been an ongoing process. I think Chips Ground Cover has been phenomenal to us, and we always kind of based the success of the holiday lighting off of how many complaints we would get in the past, and we got to a point where we don't receive that many complaints, so we take that as good news. But since that 3-year contract expired, he submitted some numbers to renew that 3-year contract for us. It didn't look all too different than years past, but for installation, takedown, and storage of commercial grade lights, he was able to put a revised price of $23,400 annually. So for each year of that contract. And then we also started having Chips Ground Cover install Christmas lights at Wicks Park as well, which has been a pretty good success. So we put the number of $2,950 annually for Wicks Park as well. So that's to kind of keep status quo and to renew that contract with Chips Ground Cover. There's not a ton of competition, but it's just given the level of service that they provide to us and all the complexities that went into this, and what we see when it's installed, that's what they're willing to do for us moving forward. So we also discussed, I think back at strategic planning, the idea or prospect of adding lighting throughout the city. We have Chips again broke it down for us by street. So these numbers right here are just for Chips Ground Cover to install the lights. That doesn't take into consideration the electrical needs, and a lot of the areas that are listed on there do need some electrical outlets added to them. So I'm happy to take a deep dive into it. But just for example, the electrical needs are a little bit funny. We can talk about the electrical needs and then maybe come back to the additional lighting if that works best. But the electrical options were given in a couple different companies. One was Consumers Energy. we're like, okay, how much, it's their poles. At the time, we weren't even sure exactly if they would take ownership of the poles. Those are definitely customer owned, which means that the city owns them and they're part of the flat rate billing that we receive for street lighting. To upgrade the utility outlets and hopefully block some of the outages that we've been seeing, they were able to give us some options. The first option is $317 per work location or per pole. And this basically would be Consumers Energy comes out, they deactivate the power to the pole. We have an electrician come in, make upgrades or repairs to the outlet, and then Consumers Energy comes back and repowers that outlet. There's pros and cons to it. The pro is that we maintain, I think we're going to be able to provide a lot better serviceability when the lights do go out. They do break, they do pop GFIs, and strands get ripped, and it's really important for us to get those lights back on as soon as possible. To have a contractor come in and provide some preliminary numbers for repairs and upgrades to the GFIs, I saw quotes from a few different companies. They were all over the map. The first was Polarity Electric. They provided a quote of $385 per pole. And RAF Electric provided a number of $2,350 per pole.
Wow.
However, that was my reaction. I'm like, how can there be such a big difference between these two? So Bob Firmus over at RAF Electric actually reached out to consumers, got a little bit better understanding of what consumers would require for us to have installed on those poles. And after getting feedback from consumers directly, he was able to, after the packet went out, of course, provide me with an updated quote of $1,150 per pole. So still quite a bit, but we know for sure that would be to Consumers Energy specification. So I do question a little bit about Polarity, their number, if that's truly to consumer specification. So that's a detail that we would have to work out.
Ask a question.
Sure.
In looking at this, the electrical contractor proposals would be on top of the 317
Yes.
that Consumers Energy will do.
Yes,
And
per
how-
pole.
How many poles are there?
So initially, when I went around with Consumers Energy, we had done a preliminary count of 33 poles. However, CHIPS ground cover was able to narrow that down for me a little bit more, and they actually used 23 poles. And then Havman Electric declined because due to safety concerns, they weren't comfortable and they didn't feel like they had the expertise. And
So then follow up, if we don't use those independent contractors, the 636 would have we would need the electrician for that or the next one.
so the 636, what that is, that's for Consumers Energy to come out and do a full replacement of the GFI outlets on the poles. However, if Consumers does it, they'll deactivate the line, they'll install the pole, and then Consumers Energy owns it. That sounds great and definitely had my attention for a minute, but then I found out that through talking to them that once they own it, we're not allowed to touch it. And so if a GFI on trips and I have to hit a reset button, I'm not allowed to hit that reset button to get the power back on. That's going to make the serviceability a lot more difficult for CHIPS ground cover and Public Works. A lot of times we can just go out and simply hit a GFI and the whole block of lights turns back on. If we're not able to do that, then we have to wait for Consumers Energy to show up and do it for us.
Yeah. But I thought I read in here somewhere that your staff would have the permission to pull the cord or plug it in. They couldn't do the reset or do other work on it. Could they plug it? So in other words, after the season, the CHIPS ground cover removes the lights. They can do that, or we can do that.
Yeah, we can use the outlet.
Yeah, but anything beyond
yeah.
that is
Yep.
not going to be.
Any maintenance on it, we can't do it. We're at the mercy of Consumers Energy. They did give me some feedback that, they thought that they could get most of them resolved within 4 days, but
Yeah.
I don't know. There's nothing I can do if they don't. So,
Would there be an additional charge if they had to come out here and do something?
they don't charge. I think
Would they
we
charge us?
submit,
Okay.
like outage requests.
They
for
would
street
maintain it
lights.
because it's
So,
theirs
yeah.
or?
I think so, but I would see clarification on that. So, So, yeah, initially that sounded like a great option. At the end of the day, even if you average the 1150 and 385 numbers that we were given by RAF and Polarity, we're still, it's a little more of a hassle, but then we maintain that ownership, and I'm very confident that we'll be able to keep the lights on a lot better if we go that route, so. The other number, the 1,500 per work location, that was just for consumer, when we had our initial discussion with consumers, that was just how much does it cost for you guys to add new outlets to new poles if council does decide to expand and install Christmas lights in additional areas. So I'm assuming that I would not recommend at least going with that option, because then again, they own the outlet and we're unable to touch them. That's Public Works or our contractor. But I would expect that a number would be pretty comparable if we split it between Consumers Energy and our contractors coming out and doing it. So for our math purposes, we did put some numbers together for additional lighting based on that $1,500 number. So I hope that all makes sense.
So if we looked at the 1,500, that for the 23, that the electrical cost would be 34,000 on top of the 23,000.
Right, so the 23 outlets that are out there, about 5 years ago, the city did have a contractor come out and upgrade a lot of the GFIs. When we were experiencing, what we saw last year was a lot of outages. And what we learned was that when we renew a contract with CHIPS ground cover, that year one, they buy all brand new lights for us. And to the extent possible, they'll reuse those lights for year 2 and year 3. So by the time we got to year 3 last year, there were quite a few outages. Staff, there was a little confusion on our end. Is this attributed to the outlets themselves? After talking to CHIPS ground cover, that's not really what they're seeing. They're seeing some issues with some of the more finicky GFI outlets that we have, like in front of Glicks. We always see that 200 block. We would just want to go ahead and replace that outlet because that GFI is clearly wearing out. So if there's known outlets that are giving us problems, maybe there's 5 or 10 of them or so, we just go ahead and get the repairs done on those. Other outages that we're seeing are squirrels chewing on wires, box trucks ripping them out of the tree canopy. Anything like that would trip the GFI. That was also giving us more problems too. But kind of expressing concerns from last year about how often they were out. CHIPS ground cover and we do have a pretty decent plan of how we can better keep those lights on. So one thing that they can do, as long as they're allowed to touch the outlets, is hit the reset button on it, and they can use like portable GFIs or like inline GFIs and try to isolate where the problems are. That way they could potentially get at least a good portion of a particular block relit and isolate the problem until they can have someone come out and find it and replace those wires. So, but all in, after all of that, I hope that's not too confusing. I know it is a lot of numbers, but in simple terms, if we do break it down, CHIPS listed the numbers that they gave us for additional areas, and that's for the lights to be installed. And then electrical needs, if we wanted to expand on every single one of those areas there, that 1 through 6, if we expanded the electrical there, CHIPS identified that they would need an additional 29 outlets to be have outlets added to them. And so if we're using that $1,500 math, then that could be potentially a $43,500 investment on top of the price from CHIPS. So if we went with everything for the electrical upgrades and the new lines from CHIPS, all in, we'd be at $68,000.
Hello. Hi.
For the additional space.
And that's the 68,000 for additional on top of what we're already doing for Butler Street.
So that's for the capital outlay improvements to the utility poles to get us set up for it. Yeah.
And the improvements on Butler as well, right?
That would just be for the additionals. It would be
For the additional.
58,000 plus the renewal contract.
Yeah, but you said there's a couple here in Butler, right?
Yeah,
That probably
yeah.
have to be repaired as well.
Exactly.
Okay.
So 68,000 this year, and then in the following years down to what, 26 or so under the contract?
So two parts to that. I just want
Yeah.
to make sure I understand. So the 23,400, that would be to maintain status quo
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
Culver Street, Butler Street. And then Wicks Park would be an extra 3,950 per year. And then the additional would be, at least for the first year, the 68,000.
So yeah, I guess that's what I'm going is, the big outlay this year is 68 and then kind of down to what, 26, 27.
And then the next year would be the, would be
The 23.4 and the 29.50, right?
It's close. So
Close.
the six streets that were listed, Griffith,
Yeah.
it'd be 24,500 per year. So pretty much double of what you're.
Okay.
okay,
Oh, yeah, plus those. Okay, got it.
right.
So.
I really hope this all makes sense. I'm sorry if it's
So
confusing. It-
to cover the Water Street and those streets, it would be just about double what we're paying now. And that's not including the
Right.
outlets.
And that's if you expanded to every single one of those 6 options. If you want to dial it back and consider just individual streets, I can give you some preliminary math on that. Happy to help how I can.
It's a lot of money.
Just to give you a little bit more, as a reminder, so we did budget for some, capital needs to upgrade the electrical, right? So we have $75,000 in our budget for the capital, outlay needs. So, do the expansion, upgrade what we have existing. Right now, we think we can meet that budget if you wanted to expand. So the dollars are there, if there's interest in it. But yeah, I think the big question for all of you will be, do you really want to double your holiday lighting costs, going forward? I think that there may be some interest from the Convention and Visitors Bureau in assisting with some of the costs. I don't know if they're willing to assist with any of the capital investments. I think if you were, going to make a decision to say, hey, we want to expand our holiday lighting, it'd be really nice to have a solid commitment from some partners to say, hey, we're going to help with that cost. And assuming you have a solid commitment for a number of years, I mean, even just a 1-year commitment is going to be, really tough, I think, for, the city to say, hey, do we want to continue to spend, over $50,000 in holiday lighting every year, going forward?
There's a couple practical, I'm sorry, go ahead.
A quick question. The Convention and Visitors Bureau used to donate. Have they done that, or is that 23,000 strictly from our money?
So they did donate last year.
Okay.
Was I think about $6,000, a
Yeah.
little under $6,000.
So if they did that, then that would reduce our 23,000.
Yep.
down.
Right.
Yep. I don't know if they'll have interest in donating again for the same thing. I know they're really interested in seeing an expansion. And
They were?
they are interested in see the holiday lighting expand. And so based on this conversation today, I told the director that, hey, I would, bring some sort of proposal to them at their next meeting, whether it's helping pay for what we have existing, upgrading, whatever your direction.
I won't put Ashley on the spot unless she raises her hand in our Zoom meeting, but so you have broached this subject with them to gauge the CVB's interest in partnering with us, if you will.
Yeah, so last year when I was there with the grant application, they were very clear that they wanted to see an expansion and
Okay.
It's came up at their last meeting, hey, it's just something that you guys are still maybe going to approach us with, and I'd updated Lisa that we were having this conversation.
A couple,
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know. Like
a couple points of consideration, I guess. One, there's a lot of service, at least from a staff perspective on keeping these lights on. Like I said, if a squirrel chews through the wires or something like that, it takes us some time to diagnose and figure out where that is. And we seem to have a lot of those issues. And, there's also some elements too, as I was walking Water Street, there's a lot of areas in front of Coral Gables where we don't necessarily have a solid block of nice mature trees. So I really question if we're going to have that same kind of majestic canopy look that we have, with some of those areas. It may look a little bit spotty, at least on that street. So just things to consider.
Is there any sense in breaking this into a couple buckets? The infrastructure piece, which, sounds like we might own if we go that route. And then revisit how tight are we on a deadline to make a decision with CHIPS? Because I would hate to put the CVB on the spot, but if we show a commitment to the appropriate infrastructure, that might kind of accelerate a conversation with the CVB about, their preference. And I think we've heard from a lot of businesses over the years to expand to the streets off of Butler, and Water Street as well.
Mhm.
To because I think that they've communicated to us that they feel a bit left out.
Mhm.
So I'm just wondering if that's an option yet,
Yeah,
or
so.
do you need a decision sooner?
I mean, sooner is better. Hopefully there's a decision at least on like the renewal portion of this contract. I think really what kind of comes down to is if there's an expansion and what that might look like. So, CHIPS ground cover, they do have to kind of prepare for this, order lights. They come from overseas, and provide staffing and scheduling for not just us, but other communities as well. But they're willing to give us a little bit of time at least to figure out if we want to do some sort of an expansion or not.
Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So I kind of put this in two buckets, as Councilmember Dean just mentioned. The first bucket is let's get this season underway in the next 3 years under the contract. And you recommend CHIPS ground cover. They've had a good reputation. They've done well by the city. I think we should move forward on upgrading and, getting this going for the next 3 years. The lights, I love the lights. I mean, that's probably one thing, especially when the snow's falling, people comment on that all the time. So it's definitely been a good investment from a community standpoint and, visitors, et cetera. The expansion, though, I think that should be further vetted out because the costs, I'm still trying to get my head around the costs. So thank you for walking us through it. But I would almost start to think, okay, how do we actually market this? Because in years past, there was a Sparkle Committee, you may remember the Sparkle Committee, and they would raise a lot of money for lighting for the city, for the yearly costs as well as expansion. I'm not saying the Sparkle Committee should come back, but I think there's an opportunity here to, further vet this out, maybe put it on a per tree cost and start to put a program together to, people may want to donate a tree for lighting, or let's think about a way to partner with, the CVB's already put money on the table and presumably may be willing to put some more going forward. But I think let's get first things first. Let's get this year going. Let's get our main lights that we already have set up in good shape and take care of the issues that you mentioned, some of the maintenance issues. And I am concerned about a larger expansion of this and the maintenance on the DPW staff, which is already over capacity. That's just another thing on your plate that your staff has to manage. It's going to be beautiful. I have no doubt it's going to look great, but we have to look at what it costs the city from a standpoint of cost, as well as the ability to be able to maintain it and keep the lights on, no pun intended. So I think we should address the immediate renewal of the agreement. And then let's really talk about how we can maybe make the rest of it happen with some partnerships and make a plan for that.
I see
Go
two
ahead.
buckets. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. I see two buckets. Were you talking about recommending the $1,500 option?
No, I'm not, that was just the 1,500 was just an option given from consumers to run power to new poles. But after finding out that they then own it and we can't touch it, it's probably not the best option for us.
So, and then the 636, do we get to work on those? No.
No,
You'll
no,
be able to use them. So the only one that will be able to go in and change outlets or do any of that is the 317, which then puts all of that on your staff to do.
yes. And contractor, yeah. But but hey, we on Monday, we hired a new administrative project coordinator, and that's Michelle Gibson over here. So, and her and I spent some time this week too, walking it and kind of going over some of the details and getting her up to speed on this too. So, there is some administrative help on this and support. So, there's some things that we can do to help kind of solidify some numbers and put more accurate information. It's really challenging to do so because until CHIPS ground cover comes out and they actually start plugging in lights, we don't know exactly how many outlets they're going to need for this stuff. So we can put our estimates together and read the back of the packages on the Christmas lights and see how much power each one of them takes and do our math. But there's the practical.
We could go forward with the initial 23,000 plus the other amount for Wix. And then on the electrical options, the 317, and then maybe decide later on which to add on.
You could, absolutely, you could do that. And CHIPS ground cover, it seems like, even if it were, I don't want to speak for them, obviously, like from his perspective, they would like a decision sooner rather than later, but they do they start very early. They start pretty much right after Labor Day installing the lights. They may not turn them on, but they'll install them then. But they have quite a few communities that they take care of, and he's totally okay with us adding this at a different time if we wanted to.
Gregory, go ahead.
Yeah, Ryan, you said we had 75,000 set aside for what?
The actual
In our
pole
budget?
upgrade needs.
For the what? For these electrical upgrades?
Correct.
These particular?
Correct.
Okay. So the money's already there. We've already planned to spend it.
Right.
Okay.
Is that for the addition too? Was that to cover the addition too?
Well, initially, we thought that 75 was just gonna cover upgrading what we had with some of the initial numbers that we had for budget purposes, so.
Mhm.
In a sense, that's good, right? We think
You're
that
saying
that
six-
amount would probably cover the expansion too.
Nice.
Right.
Nice.
Okay.
Now, we didn't budget for, I mean, we budgeted for chips to, continue what you have on Butler. We didn't budget for
Additional.
additional beyond that.
Yeah. I'd like to see, I mean, it would be encouraging to me to go forward because CBB donated 5,000 last year. Was it 5,000, I believe?
Yeah, it was between 5 and 6,
Because we're doubling the budget. I mean, anybody's listening. I'd like to see that double as well. If they were willing to double what they have donated in the past, then that would really encourage me to go forward with it. Like Scott said, so we've been hearing this for years, how we'd like to do Water Street, so. Yeah, there was a Sparkle. I know over the years, Sadava and Sparkle would donate about 3,000 to 5,000 every year when we used to do it. I wonder, it's gotta be great to have an organization like that back again that could do something like that. But we used to have jars back in the day at the drugstore and all that, and we'd get quite a pretty penny from those because they'd be out all summer long. Janet Schmidt used to go around and collect them all the time. I remember we used to keep one at Del Sol. Yeah.
We created a committee back when that went away to put in the lights, and I was on it with Sean Steele and trying to remember who else. And that was when CBB made the agreement to make the 5,000 or 6,000 right there. But there was it wasn't that there wasn't interest in having a Sparkle committee again. There was no one that was willing to do it.
Right.
Philosophically, I like the city investing in infrastructure and, these outlets, which presumably would make your, even though it's more, it potentially would make your job easier because they're more reliable, presumably, and easier for you guys to handle, hopefully. But yeah, I would like to see, if we provide like the playing field, the infrastructure, it would be nice to see the business community then also take the initiative to utilize that infrastructure. Maybe they have ideas on things they'd like to do. I really like the lakes, and I think they're a really good thing for us in our kind of non-prime visitor season. I mean, if we're looking for ways to expand tourist season, in Willowdale Hollies, I mean, not many people complain that when we turn those lights on and leave them on for a long time, because it gets dark there.
They like it. They like it in January and February. I hear it all the time.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, that we're going as far as on Water Street as far as Mary. I know there's some, I guess any businesses past that. I just want to make sure everybody's covered. I know you're on the corner there, but
Yeah, but we're not open, so it's
Right.
okay. It's like there's a lot of businesses down there, even Ida Reds, they're not open, past a certain time.
oh,
And
that's
the
right.
barge is not open, after
Uh-huh.
a certain time of the year.
Right,
And so, I'm just mostly concerned about the businesses that are open during Christmas.
sure,
And
yeah,
making sure that their street isn't dark.
right.
And
Because it
making
does get dark
still-
over on Water
'cause
Street,
it
yeah.
gets dark and you just want it to still have that holiday shopping feel. And I think there's a point where we can stop it, where those businesses further uptown are closed, during certain,
Yeah.
in December. So
Right, right.
I would be okay cutting it off at a certain point
You're right,
because those businesses aren't open.
sure.
So,
And to that point, I think Mary's a logical stop because you have residences the next 2 blocks north.
Yeah.
There are
Mhm.
people living there. So we want to be respectful of those folks.
Right,
Even those are not bright lights.
Yeah, you're right.
We need to be. So when we come back to look at the entire plan, I would like to see a map with a schematic of the trees that were identified, just so we can get a sense of what this looks like, the number of trees on the street. And I think in terms of maybe some kind of campaign or whatever we're going to do to maybe partner, is that we can put a per cost or, per tree cost or a street cost. And then actually see what the installations are going to look like. So I think the visual will help everybody kind of understand what this is going to look like and how far it's going to go. would be helpful. That should be pretty easy to pull that off of, probably Google or something. It'd be easy to map it. So-
Well, well, no, but that's what the council wants. We can look at that, but I will say that I think what I heard from Scott is that it's a little challenging to get all of the details without some, even to the point of getting to the point where you're plugging things in. And I think, you
Mhm.
know, schematics are gonna cost dollars to have somebody put that together and to actually look at like, how much does a strand of lights cost to put on this tree here and then running it here with this. I think we're gonna get into some details that are gonna cost us some
Would-
time and money to prepare. We can probably get to that level of detail if you want it, but.
We walk it with
I
Nick.
get it.
I mean, we walked it with Nick. That was pretty much.
Yeah, and I think
easy
Scott has
to
walked
do.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would encourage you to. I mean,
Yeah.
at least for the additional areas like Mason Street, for example, from Butler to Griffith, all those trees are very small. I mean,
Right.
they're 12, 15 feet tall.
Right.
Might look, I don't know, it might look funny. It won't have that appeal like Butler Street does, but yeah, I would encourage, if you want to take a look and walk and talk.
As Chips comes in and they're trying out these trees, we're gonna have the electrician on hand at that point. We're saying, you know, within this week or two, he's gonna come out and they're gonna work together in unison. Is that the idea? Because like you said, it's gonna take Chips a while to go out there and figure out where we need things as they're looking at it, right?
They already did a preliminary scouting of
Okay.
the additional areas and identified which poles they would need outlets ran to. So the only coordination that would need to take place would be when consumers deactivates the lines above and runs the line down to where an electrician can connect it. And then they re-energize.
Okay.
So yeah, the consumers and the electrical contractor would have to be there within a day or two of each other, I would think.
All right. Do you need anything more from us as far as how this is going to be set up for Monday?
So I certainly here, I think there's strong support for continuing with what we have and upgrading the infrastructure that we have so we can continue to have a good product where we've had holiday lighting. I'm hearing some mixed thoughts on, I think there's interest, I'm hearing interest from all of you in expanding if, you know, we have some strong financial support maybe to, for that to continue, whether it's additional dollars from the CVB, whether it's, you know, donations from others.
I'm in favor of expanding. I mean, I think we've got the money to do it. It doesn't need to be as comprehensive as all of these. And that would, if we're gonna do things, let's see how a certain set happens first and how effective that is. If it's gonna be, you're not gonna have any overhang or anything like that, there's just an area, then you don't do it. But I'd like to see us expand somewhere on those streets.
I agree with that.
I agree as well.
Yeah, I'm comfortable.
So if there's a more incremental approach, you have some direction or thoughts on where you'd like to see us focus?
I think on Water Street, right?
Mhm.
So,
Definitely
but
water.
not necessarily the side streets. Am I?
Yeah.
Is that?
Only maybe in front of Uncommon Grounds, because they actually have a beautiful canopy.
Okay.
And I don't remember what that street is.
Other thoughts on that? Go ahead.
Yeah, what I want to see is and again, we got a couple of different selections here in terms of how we approach the outlets, which you've explained. So I'd like to see a proposal on what you would like us to do, and I'd also like to see a line item in that proposal in terms of what the commitment's going to be from, or not commitment, but the estimated amount of time you're going to have to spend supporting this expansion as well as the current, right? I mean, I want to get a sense of what that's going to look like from just a commitment standpoint. Here's what we think we're going to have to do with that expansion to support it. So I'm still not 100% comfortable with the end costs. So I just want to see a little bit more detail around that. And again, I fully support the 3-year renewal with CHIPS ground cover. The only other question I have about that is the 26 to change a year. Is that a fixed amount for the 3-year period? Lock that cost in for the 3 years, or is that going to be subject to a yearly increase of some
Which
kind?
number was that? Which
The,
year? The
for
23,
what we currently have,
the
the
23.
26,
We're basically downtown in Wicks.
yeah, downtown, which is like 26 and change.
Yeah, that's fixed per year
Okay.
for both.
And
Chris, go ahead.
I have two other just minimal questions on page 9. on the proposal, it says that to be included within the downtown service area includes up to 30 free services, and then it's $85. Do you know how many we had this last year?
I don't. We probably didn't lean on that as much as we should have, because I think a lot of times the public works guys would go out there and they would kind of lock in on what the issue was and spend more time trying to figure that out. So I don't think it's anywhere near 30.
And then on page 11, I know there's a difference in the contracts. I'm not quite sure what it is, but that one says you receive 3 free services per season. That's only one a month. And I'm not sure what part of that is different than the previous.
30.
Well, no, I know the difference is, what's the difference between the two contracts? Because we got one contract on the page 8, 9, and another contract on page 10 and 11. And another one on 12 and 13.
But up above that, I think in the description, I think where he talks about having 30 free service calls. So
Okay.
I can see some, yeah.
It does say here on this.
Oh, gotcha.
Mhm. Okay. Well, the 3 per year didn't seem.
That wouldn't cut it.
that would-
No.
Right.
No.
Okay, that.
Maybe they missed a zero.
Yep. So up there, it notes otherwise of 30 free services.
Yeah, it's probably missing a 0.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Any other clarification you both need? Go ahead.
Just a thought, maybe it's time to bring the barge party back, because that raised a lot of money for lights.
You know, one quick thing, in the past, we've tried stuff and, I remember one year we installed cold or daylight bulbs, and it was like a
Yep.
huge no-no
Mhm.
based on community feedback. And so,
Mhm.
but we've always tried things. If it doesn't work, we can reevaluate. So.
Okay.
We'll probably draw this up maybe with a few different options, status quo, doing at least water and maybe Hoffman or all in, and present that.
Yeah.
Capital and what that annual cost would be for the next 3 years at least to all of you and, yeah,
Okay.
I think that's how we will present it for Monday.
That's a good idea. And then in the
Also go
meantime-
back to the CBB to see if there's any inclination. I mean, obviously they have to talk to their board, but see if there's any idea maybe on what they might be interested in, or maybe they already budgeted for some of this.
That'd be helpful, because sometimes you go 20% of the way and incur 80% of the cost. right?
Mhm.
So at that point in time, it's like, what are we gonna do? It's yes or no, right? For the whole
I'm
thing.
also hearing not much of a desire to have consumers do all the replacements,
I don't
right?
think
'Cause that-
so.
Correct.
It sounds,
Correct.
it gives us more flexibility if you have control and
Yeah.
our contractors have control.
Definitely.
Okay.
And then, yeah, I would encourage you just to kind of, we all know what these look like in the winter time. So between now and the next meeting, I'd encourage you to take a drive around and try to visualize what that looks like per street. That might.
Yeah, I don't have to see I don't have to have that visible.
Yeah. We know where it's dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me clarify, what I was looking for was not necessarily light versus dark, it's looking at where the actual, because this all seems to be
Right.
based on the number of trees.
Right.
So if you put, and you can do this easily on Google, you can just, as long as you know which trees they pinpointed, you just point those on the map, doesn't take much to do that.
Right.
And then what you can do is you can begin to use that as a, if you want to raise money, say, if you want to sponsor a tree for, and then you can just take the cost and divide it by the number of trees. I'm just thinking of ways that we can maybe promote this to get some partnerships going.
I'm just
That's
thinking,
where I was coming
and
from.
I'm thinking that would be more work, to do that.
Yeah, especially since we have the money. We know that's a horrible way to put it.
One more thing, keep in mind that, like along Butler Street and a lot of these streets, not every tree gets lights. So some
Right.
of them are too small, they won't support the wires or extension cords. It'll damage the tree. And so just because they're there, doesn't mean that it's in the inventory. But
Good.
But
Okay.
Chips does a great job once they do the installation. I'm sure Nick's gonna go around and count every single one of them and how many strands he uses on each one. And he marks all the utility poles that he pulls from, and
Good.
he's happy to provide that information back to us.
All right, Scott, thank you.
No, just the only other thing I think that's, unless I missed it, is there's the price for the electricians to come out and support the pole work. There was big swing between the two, and you were gonna try and get under the covers for that as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So hopefully I can shed a little more light on that on Monday about that, but because there was a huge number, we were shocked at first, because one is, basically 100,000 and the other one.
I know you're not gonna go to the cheap one and say
Right.
you're too cheap, can you raise your bid? You're gonna go to the other
Exactly, yeah,
one.
no, but those kinds of differences, we want to make sure that we know what we're getting, what, if there's differences, what are they? Is all the work going to be Consumers Energy approved? And hopefully it's somewhere.
Russ?
Great.
Yeah, just one last question about Habman. Habman's in the commercial electric business, so I'm surprised when you said that they declined due to safety concerns.
Yeah,
What did they?
is there a reason?
I think just the outlet, the utility poles, just working up in an aerial lift. I don't know if parking is an issue, if they kind of view it as, yeah.
Who knows?
They
Are
just,
they worried about liability?
it sounded like it to me.
Okay. All right, Scott, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All right.
Scott.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on to discussion item 6B, amending the city code. Ryan, if you would like to help us out with this.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes.
We were before you a couple months ago with some proposed changes to chapter 135 of your code of ordinances that relates to weapons. And at that time, you all discussed some changes to basically allow for archery hunting within the city. Whereas your current ordinance really kind of prohibits that unless you seek some sort of approval from the city council. So based on some case law changes and some recommendations and discussions that were occurring at the Community Wildlife Committee, we brought you that ordinance, you reviewed, and you indicated that you were comfortable with the changes that related to firearms and indicating that, firearms will not continue to be allowed to be discharged in the city except for deer calls, which was added in, which, if the council choose to move forward with a actually sanctioned deer call or hiring somebody to do that, that would be allowable discharges of firearms within the city. But you wanted some further work on the archery pieces and indicated that you weren't comfortable with kind of a citywide allowance for archery hunting, but would prefer to maybe see kind of some minimum land areas or areas of the city where that may be permissible. So, and all of that is with the backdrop of there's state laws that essentially kind of govern hunting, and that there's hunter safety requirements that have to be obtained. And then there's kind of state law that would kind of govern, hey, you can't be reckless. You got to be smart, a smart hunter, and you have liabilities if you're not acting properly and that sort of thing. So so it kind of went back, and dune grass was used as your example of an area that you thought might be an area that hunting should be permitted. And so when Luke was here, I asked him to kind of work through, what are the actual parcel sizes or lot sizes in dune grass? All right, what's the average? What's the smallest? What's the largest? And so that kind of averaged out to be about 2 acres. The small side, about a half acre, large size over 5, right? So then I asked them to kind of map out, show us, all of the properties within the city that are 1 or more acre, 1.5 more acres, 2 or more acres or 3 or more acres. And so, so you kind of have a map on your screen there and in your packet that kind of gives you an idea. Now, obviously, not all of those properties are going to necessarily see hunting, right? Some of them may be condominiums that would never allow it. And they're just not, set up for that purpose. School's on there. I don't know if the school would ever have any interest in allowing somebody to do any hunting on their property. So keep that in mind. Just because an area is highlighted doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be, appropriate for that purpose. So I reached out to Mr. Poppy who's the Department of Natural Resources Wildlife Biologist to kind of say, hey, what do you think about this approach and using some minimum parcel sizes? And he checked with their deer specialists. That's not really a method that they see widely used because there's so many different variables with that. And he kind of referred back to the fact that obviously safety is the responsibility of the hunter. There's licenses, there's courses that they have to take. And a lot of it for him kind of broke down to, if you actually shoot and hit a deer with an arrow, how far is it going to go before you would need to, retrieve it? And that's some of that depends on the shots and where they're hit and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of factors. So I did look at Ottawa County to kind of see what their regulations showed. And so they have some rules and regulations related to hunting and their parks. They do allow hunting within But the restrictions are you can't be within 450 feet of an occupied building, and then you have to be 30 yards from a property line, but otherwise that's kind of the extent of their restrictions as far as the distances go. I reached out to Sergeant Haas, kind of ran Mr. Poppy's thoughts by him, and he had kind of a similar comment that he knows some hunters that would be really good on really small pieces of land, would be a great hunter and can make it happen, and others would just need a larger amount of space, and that there's just really not, a good hard and fast recommendation that he would give, but noted, just like Mr. Poppy, right? It all comes down to the hunter being responsible and being safe, knowing their backdrop, knowing where that direction they're shooting, knowing, what's likely to happen when they actually hit a deer and where it's going to go and how far it's going to go. So, so it kind of hopefully gives you some more to kind of, wrestle with and kind of looking at, is there a minimum parcel size that you want to establish for archery hunting of deer? If there is a minimum parcel size, what if we have multiple properties that don't meet that, but maybe they have permission of their neighbors that are contiguous and can string together enough property to make that happen. Are you willing to allow hunting of deer on public lands? Or do you want it to just, strictly really, private? And is there a minimum distance from occupied buildings that had kind of come up in your discussions last time as well? Should we keep folks from a certain distance from buildings if they're hunting, or property lines? So I kind of leave those questions and I look forward to further discussion from you.
Okay. Any comments?
One last piece I should have mentioned. So legal has updated the ordinance language to basically indicate that archery hunting would be allowed per resolution of the city council, basically. So the language that's before you kind of would clean that up. And then basically what you would be discussing today is what would you like to see in a resolution? And then we'll work to grab.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start since I was on the committee. Yeah, I like what Jake and his team have done to clean up the ordinance. I think, case laws changed around this issue. So I think what he's got is useful. I had always envisioned personally that public land hunting, i.e. city property, for liability reasons, should probably be handled by a call. So the city has legal protections. The private piece, I find the map very helpful. I think if we were to allow some of these communities, particularly on the other side of the river, to organize a private hunt within the confines of the state hunting season using only archery equipment, I could support that. And I think that might be a nice start, because the areas that seem to be most conducive to hunting based on the map seem to correspond with not only the anecdotal information we have, but some of the drone survey stuff that we found when we studied this, with the help of the fire department using the drone. Douglas has gone ahead allowing archery hunting. They did not specify a lot size. So that's how they've approached it.
They're allowing archery hunting like for regular private citizens?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, no one, to my knowledge, no one calls with archery equipment. They use rifles with professional sharpshooters. I haven't heard of anything to the contrary of that. So I think, this, I think, hopefully will answer, based on some of the lot sizes, some of the concerns about, very small properties. I live on a very small property, on the hill, so it wouldn't be conducive to hunting. And certainly anybody that, had a short-term rental clearly would not, want to allow anyone to engage in that. And I don't think anybody would consider that just because hunting is allowed in November or October, that you could go to a rental property and start hunting without permission of the landowner, unless that was specified in some kind of agreement. So I think this is decent. I think if the council wants to kind of push it more toward these bigger areas, you could go with a acreage. I did some research as well, and Ryan and I corresponded about this. If you were a hunter, typically looking for hunting land, like you were looking for somebody to lease some hunting land from, you typically really wouldn't consider something probably smaller than 10 acres, to be honest, just because you want an area that's rich with wildlife. Mr. Popey, in one of his correspondences to us said he personally has hunted on, I think he said 4 or 5 acres, successfully. So those are a couple things to consider, but I'm supportive of the ordinance and I'm open to whatever the rest of the council's consensus is on, where they think archery could be done, privately in correspondence with the state hunting laws and the hunting season.
Anyone else want to? Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a hard time with the archery, just, especially since they would say it could be any size, just our rental is right across from you and the deer walked right through our front gate and right out the back. And it's hard for me to see if I decided suddenly I want to become an archer and I take the hunting course and I take the archer, all that kind of stuff, then I can shoot the deer on my own property on that small little thing. And if I'm not going to be good, I'm going to hit it somewhere and they don't die right away with a bow and arrow unless you're amazingly good. It's going to run somewhere. It's going to hit somebody. The only thing I would be in agreement right now is up on the green, up on the top that we own up there, and try to see some way of working the ability to have public, open that up to the public for during the deer season times. That's about all I can do. I mean, I'll go along, if we have some other ideas.
Russ.
Yeah, thank you. I remain opposed to the archery, opening this up to archery, and I just want to back up to, I think we got a bit of scope creep going on here. So the original thought in the formation of the Tri-Community Wildlife Committee was to determine how the city, township, and the village of Douglas can control its deer population. And the recommendation is a call, which I support. I've done a fair amount of research on this as well and heard from other people with expertise in this area that this is the method to control the population, is to have a focused call by professionals that are contracted to do that work. The changes in the ordinance that have been suggested would allow the city council the flexibility to permit that when that occurs. I am not in support of opening up the entire community or as certain parts of the community to public archery or public hunting. I think that just opens up a whole can of worms for safety issues as well as defining where, to the point that Councilmember Peterson made, when a deer is hit and they do not die immediately unless you're an expert at it. They're going to run to another property. You run into those issues. I think it's just better just to keep that out of the mix. And to my mind, if we're just simply focused on getting the ordinance to where it needs to be to allow the call, this does it. That's it. That's as far as we should go with it, is to allow us the flexibility to be able to permit that.
Joe.
Yeah, I'm actually in agreement with Council Gardner and Peterson. I think I've made my opinion clear in the last time we discussed this, that I think we may get there, but I think we should, take some incremental steps and see what impact that has on the deer population. And I'd like to see us start with the cull. I think we all agreed that we got professionals. It's done at night, hopefully not too shocking to the community. And, maybe that brings the population to a level that we can live with. If it doesn't, then I would say let's take step 2, and maybe step 2 is looking at, I like the idea of having, distance from buildings, distance from property lines. That might take out, our more densely populated areas right off the bat if we set those thresholds at the right level. Because to me, going into the, our more populous areas and turning it loose to bow hunters, that's a non-starter for me. So I guess, I would certainly support, us taking that first baby step, and let's see if we can take a swing at the problem and get it under control that way, and then come back and talk if we need to get a little bit more aggressive. That's just my outlook. Yeah.
Okay. Great.
I guess I'm gonna repeat what you just heard. Let's see if this culling works first, I don't know if this is a good idea to jump into right now. Looking at the map really wakes me up a little bit more. Seeing how many small lots there are around here. And then some of the lots that are 1.5 to 2 acres, how close they are to some of the smaller lots as well, even some of these 3-acre lots, you've got a lot of smaller lots around them.
Pat, can you remind us again the cost of a call? I remember it being, it
It-
seemed
it-
really
it-
high per,
It varies. I've seen anywhere from $300 to $700
per
per
year.
animal. I don't know what's happening with the federal budget with USDA's certification or the program. But people typically use USDA sharpshooters. I, I understand the council's concerns. I'm not, don't get me wrong, I'm not in favor of opening up hunting into these, let's just say these gray or yellow areas that are highly populated. I don't think they'd be conducive to hunting, to Councilman Peterson's point, but we live in very small lots in that area, that side of the river. I am more open-minded to what's possible, coordinating with, homeowners associations and entities like Oxbow on the other side of the river where I think the deer are more prevalent and I think more problematic based on just observation and some of the data we got from the drone. I guess I would just, I understand where the council's coming from, taking an incremental approach. I just would try to manage expectations. Culling deer is very similar to treating for milfoil in the lake. I would urge you all to think about it in those terms. One cull, even 2 or 3 culls won't change the animal's behavior and habits. So it will be something that if it continues to be a problem, starts to cause habitat damage, to our critical dune habitat, we will have to build, culling into our annual budget because it's not a once and done thing. Hunting changes the animal's behavior because, right now they consider that area to be safe. They really won't feel much pressure from the cull based on the way it's done. They don't really, sense that sort of presence of man, like in, say, an oxbow tree or, a tree in like dune grass. So I wouldn't see them suddenly saying, oh, there's a cull every year, so we'll never go to Saugatuck again. So I just think you need to be mindful of that. And it could be budgeted for accordingly. So
Would we be allowed to, if we paid for a call, and figured out how much that would cost and all of that, if there were individuals who wanted to do a private call, say in Dune Ridge or some other area, could they get a permit to do that in a private call type of thing? If we, as a council said, yes, that sounds great to us for one particular area. I don't see why we wouldn't say yes to that.
Well, a follow-up, and this is probably a stupid question. Why would we not be able to do up the peninsula, which is public land, open that up to hunting like the Allegan County Park is, that's open to public hunting? It is, I don't know the answer.
It's the first I've heard any support on the council for that.
But,
For, on the public land?
To allow public hunting.
public land, right.
It's the first I've heard anyone on the council suggest that.
yeah, that's a pretty heavily trafficked area by hikers with dogs.
That's what I was just gonna say. The green, I'm kind of leaning towards, I could see where green, that whole area there on the north, that peninsula would be a good spot to offer that. But then I'm thinking of all my friends and people that I know all year long, that walk and hike in that area.
Councilmember Dean, that's probably why it never came up before.
No, it's fine. No, I'm glad we're having the discussion. I mean, it's an important discussion to have.
Well, I
So
think
we would do it.
the spirit of
more-
the question still is a valid question,
Yeah.
right? Can we structure it in such a way that private hunts are allowed based on special circumstances and council approval?
Well,
I would
I've-
feel
Makes sense.
comfortable doing that.
I've never, let me just, a few finer points on
Okay.
this. I've never heard of culling taking place during the regular hunting season. So if it was a cull, let's just hypothetically say the folks in Dune Grass wanted to have a cull, or let's say the Oxbow folks wanted to have a cull, but that's a whole nother question because the city actually owns Oxbow, but there's
Right.
lease and whatever, so
Right.
I don't want to get into that, but let's just say in one of these big green areas that's, fairly open and, you could bring free deer within 100 yards. Let's say Dune Grass wanted to a cull, they would probably contract with sharpshooters, which we could, permit to to do that, typically culling occurs in the summer months before the regular hunting season. I haven't heard of culling taking place during the regular hunting season.
Mhm.
So then the question would be, would this ordinance allow? And
Now,
I don't
why
think,
would,
and I don't-
why wouldn't you be able to do a cull during a hunting season if it's normally not, you normally can't hunt in those areas? Like, couldn't you still have a private hunt, if you would, during
During
hunting
hunting
season?
season?
I don't see why you could not.
I don't know that if the ordinance is structured to allow it the way it is. I'd have to ask for Jake's view if that would, if that's possible, because it sounds like the council's leaning toward not allowing any type of archery hunting, and I don't believe I'm hearing support from the council to have firearm private hunting. So I'm not hearing that, so that would lead itself to archery, and I'm not familiar with bowling being done using archery equipment. That was never something that
So
was shown.
the archery equipment was used in Douglas the last time.
Was it?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yep,
I did hear it was.
they did bow hunting.
Well,
Yeah,
Yes.
like behind Wilderness Ridge, like
Okay.
off that way.
from what I heard about that was like kind of an ad hoc with an individual that just did it and it wasn't.
It didn't-
the
They
most
got like 7.
success- It wasn't the most successful.
I believe 7,
Seven, okay, yeah.
yeah, from my recollection.
I don't think the ordinance is set up to allow that, right, the way it is, and I would ask Jake to say.
Guess I'm just trying to wrap my head around what would be the best thing for all of us to
Right.
allow to do. I mean, we're paying for a call.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
that's with firearm.
Culling is typically done with firearms, yes.
Okay.
Yes, typically done at night with rifles that are suppressed, frangible ammunition, that's, it minimizes disturbance. The type of ammunition used is designed not to travel very far.
But we have to pay, the city has to pay for that.
We would, or let's just say Dune Grass, and we want to pay for our own call, they would have to pay for it and hire, and they have to get a special permit
Okay.
from DNR to do it.
Okay.
Is this something, is, we're not talking about public land, it's all private land, right? Right, we haven't talked about hunting on public land, other than the culling. Right.
Other than just what I just brought up, no, that's.
Well, I think these.
But we're talking about private property here, right?
Well,
Yeah.
no, the ordinance, once again, Jake's available, but the ordinance makes it possible, should we decide, and I think there was support in the council to be able to do a call, should we decide to budget.
These are with professionals,
Right.
not public
Yes.
people.
But
But we could also permit, I think, private people to do a call if they wished it. Like, say a homeowners association wanted to do a call, they could come before council and ask for permission, and this change to the ordinance would make that possible.
What I'm saying, what I'm thinking is that people that own these properties, I mean, do we really have that many hunters around here in this area? That
So
own these
it
properties?
did come to us before that they wanted to have basically
Okay.
a call within
It's good from Dune Grass.
dune grass.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do
They
think-
were gonna
And
have,
I do think some of this are public parcels. I think I'm seeing like, Bald Head Park and, see, a lot of this green is.
A parcel, but.
A lot of the
Right.
green is city land as well, so.
Right.
Maybe we should let them try it and see how it works for them.
right, right.
It's certainly possible. I mean, that's certainly an option the council has, is just to make it possible for culling to happen. And some communities have gone that route.
So either way, by changing this ordinance, it allows for somebody to come to us asking.
It clears the way for the ask to happen. I believe.
Got it.
And Jake, don't jump in if I'm wrong, Jake.
Yeah, so right now, and just to clarify, because there's been some back and
You're muted,
forth,
Jake.
and it hasn't been super easy for me to hear.
James is working on it.
The,
Sorry, Jake, you were cut off. We had you on mute, so go ahead.
oh,
If
can you
start
hear me
over.
now?
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay, so the question is, does the ordinance as presented allow a call? Is the question, would that be only with firearms? Or also would the ordinance as written allow a bow call? Is that what you're asking me?
I think,
I would just point to page 22. Under the new regulations, the discharge of firearms is still prohibited within city limits. With exceptions, law enforcement officers discharging their duties and now for deer calls that have received approval from the city, the Allegheny County Sheriff's Department, and other applicable state and local agencies, period. So what that tells me is that the city council ultimately reserves the decision about if Dune Grass comes to us and says, we want to do an organized deer call. Hey, tell us your plan.
Yeah.
We're going to engage, et cetera. The city council ultimately says yes or no to that. So
Sounds good.
that's the way I read it.
And that's correct.
And then I would just add that that's limited to the use of firearms because archery equipment is regulated under a separate section and as presented, the limitation there doesn't relate to a cull, but it's just geographic areas that are approved by the council via resolution. And so in theory, if you had just people from Dunegrass who wanted to use firearms as part of a deer call, I assume that it would have to be during regular hunting season. Because if they're just, normal citizens, they'd have to adhere to hunting schedules.
Sure.
Otherwise, that would be something the city could approve.
Sure, whereas a professional culler doesn't have to adhere to a deer season.
Yeah.
Right, but a regular resident will
Makes-
always have to adhere to the deer season.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard any support for allowing private citizens to engage in firearm hunting. Even if they
No.
call it a call.
That should still be, that's expressly prohibited.
Yeah,
That's-
well, exactly, but I think we need to be careful that just to understand.
Right,
That, no, if the, I'm just not aware of. I mean, the example that you mentioned, Mayor Pro Tem, is interesting, but I just. In all of our committee meetings, none of the experts said, there's a cadre of marksmen that only use archery equipment to do culling. It's typically done, once again, at night, with rifles that have scopes that have night vision equipment, that they're suppressed silencers, and they use a special type of ammunition. So it's designed to be very discreet and highly effective because it's an ideal time to target the deer,
I guess for me, I would allow bow hunting in Dune Ridge if they have a private bow hunting session as part of a call. I wouldn't have a problem with that if it was during hunting season.
that would sort of lend itself then to us approving just the simple solution of allowing archery equipment discharged during the hunting season.
It would have to be like, they would still have to come to the city council to get approval, I would
Well,
think.
I suppose it could be.
I mean, it's just because they've asked before and
Yeah.
I just don't see why, I
Well,
mean, it would only help it would
Yeah.
only help.
Presumably, they're trying to avoid the cost of sharpshooters.
Probably, yeah.
Presumably.
right.
So you would need to adjust the ordinance then. I would recommend at least then once again, to go to. You can use archery equipment, because then suddenly you're governed by the state's hunting rules. And once again, and the city does not incur any sort of liability or associated cost.
So you're kind of
Yeah.
interested, I mean, your ordinance today basically says if you want to hunt, you have to come and ask for the city permission to do that, and then we present the plan to the city council. I mean, that's how the ordinance is written today. I mean, so it almost sounds like you're all kind of wanting to look at this on a case by case basis.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Understanding that you may have an interest in a call.
That seems to be the consensus, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay. Any further discussion? Do we feel like we have clarity?
yeah, I'd rather see it, like we said, by case basis.
I'm just it's a new question for me of, do they, no, it never came up among the professionals. But I'm not sure there's professional colors that use archery equipment. That one's just caught me by surprise. Because it just never came up among the experts. And the AI says yes, but I'm not sure it's really viable.
Well, I guess we'll have to
And-
see what
yeah.
comes to us.
To clarify, you're open to either hunting or a call, somebody approaching and basically kind of drawing up plans. We'll bring them forth. Look at where they're planning to hunt, the distances from everything, what their plans are.
It's my sense the council's direction is, by cleaning up the ordinance, as Jake has presented, our hands aren't tied if we run into the situation like we did right before COVID, when we had a representative of Dunegrass show up and say we would like to have a call. You know, I think we couldn't, it couldn't go anywhere because the ordinance prohibited any firearm being discharged.
Correct.
So this, I think, at least fixes that part. And so maybe this is,
So,
maybe at least this is the incremental step.
yes.
Then do we remove the whereas on page 30 to permit the discharge of archery equipment?
I don't see why we needed,
Yeah, I agree.
yeah.
I agree.
And maybe culling with archery equipment is viable. It just, the experts, you know, one of the DNR guys actually had a side business doing culling, and he never said, yeah, sometimes I use archery equipment. It was always described as firearm based.
So to provide a little bit of additional context here, just so I can understand how to revise the ordinance if necessary. Right now, I don't necessarily know that the ordinance as written would allow the council to pass a resolution saying that archery can only be used in cults approved by the city. So the ordinance itself would need to be revised to add that exception. Right now, there's just a geographic limitation. Not like the purpose of the archery equipment. And then the other piece is if we are heading towards a wait and see approach, and the council is not really ready to allow archery within the city yet, we could keep the ordinance as written, but just not adopt a resolution that designates any area where archery equipment can be used. And so that way, if in the future we want to revisit this and say, you know, hey, we think maybe parcels of this size are going to be okay to use archery equipment. That's something where we don't have to go through the process of an ordinance amendment. We could just finally get around to adopting a resolution designating those areas we think are appropriate at that time.
It's clear as mud.
Yeah,
It's, yeah.
I'll go back to my original comment.
Thank you. I thought, I'm getting this.
The original intent here was to allow the city and the village and the township to be able to have an organized call of deer within their individual communities. To facilitate that, we needed to change our ordinance to allow the discharge of firearms by someone other than the police. And the way this is written, the way that I understand it, and as I read it through earlier, is that that change will allow that to happen. It ultimately remains the council and the Ogden County Sheriff's Department have to approve that application to do the call. Be generated by us, but it would have to be approved. That's it. I'm not in support of any other open hunting within the city. Now, if a caller comes back and says, you know, based on the situation, archery may be a better way to do this, then I think that's something we want to have the capability to do, but we shouldn't be, I don't think there's going to be really much of anybody. Maybe the Dunegrass HOA maybe come and say we want to have our own privately organized call, but I'd be surprised if anybody else beyond that would even.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to entertain individual hunters saying, hey, I can take out 10 deer pretty easily. Firearm or archery, no, that's not what we're in the business of. Hunting is prohibited in the city of Saugatuck, except for the situations we're describing,
Right, I agree.
period. It's that simple in my mind. It facilitates what the wildlife committee has achieved and keeps us safe and from
Okay.
having a lot of.
Liability.
Okay.
Does that make sense to everybody? Kind of where I'm on it?
Yeah,
It seems like it's the incremental approach that the council's kind of consensus is, you know, let's facilitate at least the ability for calls to happen if we decide to budget for it, or if a private entity decides to budget for it. The bit on what equipment is used, you know, based on our committee's meetings, it was all firearm and sharpshooters. So, you know, this is a start, and, you know, I guess we'll just have to wait and see if it becomes, you know, a recurring expense for the city that's manageable, or if it's effective, you know, in that regard. And Douglas will be doing it a little bit different. Maybe we can learn from them. So
And
That would
that's-
essentially be kind of leaving the ordinance as written, like it would indicate that you can allow for archery hunting by resolution. At this point, you're indicating that you're not interested in drafting that resolution and allowing for that, but that you are open to calls as they're approved by, the city and the sheriff's department and the DNR.
So basically, the archery prohibition kind of remains in effect in the, yeah.
It would without a resolution. That's
Yeah.
what Mr. Whitty is saying.
Yeah.
Like we can leave it as he drafted it and gives you the option later to pass a resolution, which is a little faster than, amending your ordinance and publication and waiting for, periods of time. So it gives you some flexibility.
Well, that's good because the technology around archery equipment is changing, they used, bows and arrows and crossbows used to have 50-yard range. Now there's ones on the market that can shoot 100 yards. So, who knows, it may become a viable technique for managing deer,
I think so.
so, that's possible down the road as the technology changes.
Okay.
Just note that Douglas and the city are taking very opposite approaches, right? They're like, we're not going to pursue deer calls, which
Right.
creates issues in and of itself with we're calling and then we're gonna have replacement of deer. And like, and as your Councilmember Dean indicated, we may have more costs on us if we're the only ones doing that. They're allowing the private side to kind of see how that goes first. So it's kind of.
And I think that works for us. I mean, that's kind of.
We'll learn
the
from
step.
each other.
Yeah,
Okay.
just shoot all the deer over there.
The Douglas, all that they didn't have a restriction on properties, right?
Oh.
So even in the city there, people, if they want to.
Yeah, they have kind of an application process to.
Oh, they
to
do
go
have an
through To apply to.
So they have that stopped, yeah. They're,
Okay.
basically like, I think this council is discussing for the culling. I think, they're also doing it on an ad hoc basis,
Right.
An application comes and they're gonna, particularly using the Douglas Police Department to also
Oh,
vet
yeah, that,
these.
yeah.
So, yeah, I think
Okay.
they're both both boards are maintaining kind of control where like the buck stops here for a yes or no on any type of
Right.
management of deer, basically. Yeah, so this is basically a departure from sort of, let's just get aligned with state.
Okay.
So it's not that.
Okay. Any other further discussion? Okay. All right, we'll move on then. We are on to discussion item 6C for the special event Haynes Wedding Fireworks Display. Ryan?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So, the city was approached by a private party that's gonna be, they have their wedding, here at the end of August at the Sagatuck Center for the Arts, and they have an interest in, a fireworks display with, display fireworks, which actually is a specific legal term, or at least a term that's defined in a state statute that defines, fireworks that are what you might think of on like, a larger event like the 4th of July or Venetian Festival and that sort of thing. It's not, consumer grade fireworks that you can kind of light off in your driveway or on your private property that you may be thinking of. And so your ordinance indicates that folks can approach the city and say, hey, we as a private party want to do display fireworks. Will you approve that? And so there's a requirement that they actually submit that request to the city at least 60 days in advance, although your ordinance basically allows for that party to apply later than that, if they show good cause to you on why they're applying late. So in this case, we received a late application, staff, because you have an ordinance that allows for us to process it, set up safety meetings, notified the fire department, the sheriff's department. Everybody kind of hopped on a safety call. Douglas was notified in this case because the fireworks company is used to kind of storing fireworks in Douglas, and they're going to be on barges out in the water. And so everybody met, kind of came up with a particular plan. The fire department has the staffing to cover this, although they're concerned by the late request and the pressures that are being placed, obviously, on their department with the number of events that we have. But we're willing to do cost recovery to say, hey, if you want to pay for our services, you're going to have to pay for it. This is for your private event, essentially, even though everybody could technically see the fireworks, right? They're doing it for their private purpose. So for your review and whether or not you'd be willing to approve the event, I think all the safety approvals were in place, I think until Monday. So Douglas reviewed their request, I think that at their council meeting, and we were notified today that they did not move forward with the application, given the application timeline not being met for their requirements. So a chunk of their safety plan is essentially an issue because they don't have Douglas approval to store the fireworks there during the day and load them up and everything that's required as part of that process. So so Douglas notified the applicant of that. I don't believe that we've heard from the applicant yet on. Yeah, so at this point, we don't have, really an updated, safety plan or what else they would plan to do to actually even store the fireworks, load them up. I mean, they would need to have all of those details. And I do have concern, we have concern from a staff perspective that we're really close to this event. They also need, permits from the state to do this as well. And we have to sign off in order for them to apply for that. At this point, it's up to you and whether or not you're willing to approve it or approve it at least conditionally on a proper safety plan being vetted. But I would say that it's going to be challenging for them to pull this off at this point without the.
I think they, and for whatever reasons, I understand things take time, but they're giving us 3 weeks to put all this together, it's pretty close. I don't know.
We've got a question.
They first reached out the end of May, and then came back 2 months later with their contract for fireworks, so it kind of started at that point.
Right.
Late July. So, and then our safety meeting was just after your last council meeting is when they had the rest of the documents.
Also, I would have appreciated the applicant to have been present at this meeting.
I did send.
Thank you.
Chris, did you have something?
Oh, no, I was gonna say, when I was reviewing the application, one thing I noticed is that their schematic on page. What page is this? Oops, 40. The time that they have written on there does not match the time that's in the application. So the application says 10:50 to 11, and that says 11:30 to 11:50. May just be a clerical error.
Apparently that's when they want to cross the street from the wedding venue to the park.
Right, but they say in the application itself that the fireworks will be 11:50, or pardon me, 10:50 to 11 PM. That's where I was, you'll see right there, Ben hours, 10:50 to 11
Oh,
PM.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, it should be 10:30 to 10. to
Yeah, so that very
10:50.
well just could be a clerical mistake. But this is also Labor Day weekend. There's gonna be a lot of folks here.
Mhm.
I just think this adds to, and especially the quick time frame here, I think it just, we're already stressed with just getting ready for events and making sure town's, ready for everybody. I think this just adds to the
I agree.
great idea, but I just think this puts too much stress on everything.
I think the biggest thing is this all has to be redone because Douglas
Douglas
denied it. So
Right.
they would have to have a whole nother plan, which is
Which
gonna
we don't
put-
have yet.
Yeah, it's gonna put them back even further. So that makes it really challenging. So,
Yeah, I would have
We're
liked to
doing
have
this-
heard from them what their plan is now, or,
We're doing a private group like this, and this is kind of our first time doing this. I would think we'd want to have everything in place, not trying to get it pulled together in the last 2 weeks.
right.
Mhm.
So it doesn't make me feel comfortable that we know the safety issues are taken care of.
yeah, same here.
Joe, same,
I'm right there. Yeah.
okay.
Oh, it feels like our hands are tied without knowing where the setup location is now. I mean, it feels like our hands are tied.
Yeah,
What are we approving? I mean, suddenly they're gonna say like, well, yeah, let's just put them at the dinghy dock. Like, well, no. So, yeah, I mean, it's not a complete plan, is it?
nope. No.
Like I said, they do have as a city council have to make a decision on to grant with conditions or deny the permit. So we'll set that up with some sample motions on Monday and kind of indicate something you're right now want to deny based on the fact that they don't have a valid safety plan anymore and have concerns with the late application. I mean, part of the requirement is to show good cause, and it sounds like you're not maybe as convinced that there's been good cause shown for the late application. So
What is, do we know?
Well,
Just Douglas
Is Douglas gonna
denying
take
it is
this?
my biggest issue, not.
That's same here.
No.
They,
It seems as though we could have worked through some of these things, but because Douglas denied their portion of it, I just don't.
We don't
if
even
they
know what
would have
they're
done
doing.
the fireworks.
It's an incomplete application.
But I mean, is Douglas gonna take this back up or they just,
They
they don't know?
I don't know what, if they, well, they may or may not have an ordinance. I don't know what it says. It sounded like today they worded it as in their policy doesn't allow them to accept event applications. This must be 90 days, so.
Policy for application submission, and they did not within that, and that was the grounds for denial.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Jamie.
we have a 30-day too.
Okay. All right, do you need anything more from us?
We'll have it ready to go for Monday.
Okay, sounds great.
Let the fireworks begin.
We will move on to discussion item 6D, the review of the master plan survey questions. And Ryan, I'll have you set this up, but I know we have our chairman, Steve Manns, in the audience from planning and zoning, if he wanted to come up and speak.
Yeah, so the planning commission has been hard at work. I think kicking off the master planning process. And it's indicated that, you know, a community survey and some community engagement to inform that process is really critical. So they've been working over several meetings now to really kind of come up with a good solid list of survey questions to inform that process. They've worked to refine that. They've had special meetings to arrive at this point. Now, I'll let the chair of the planning commission and your council member kind of explain that process here. But there was a request from some council to take a look at the questions before that survey went out. So that's what the purpose is here today, to take a look. And if you have any particular feedback, take that into account. You know, the one thing that I flagged, at least from a staff perspective, is I think the estimated time frame. So like our consulting planner typed everything into SurveyMonkey and it gives you an estimated time to complete. And so right now that's at about 30 minutes. I do have concerns that, you know, it's going to impact the, you know, the rate of folks or the amount of folks that complete the survey. But that's not to say that the planning commission didn't heavily consider that, discuss that. And I'll let them kind of speak to that and why they believe that it's still good to go. So.
All right, Steve, go ahead.
Very good. Hey, thank you guys all for wanting to take a look at this, because it has been something that's been on our agenda now for the last two monthly meetings as well as two special meetings. You know, when we decided to kick off the 2026 is what we're hoping for, the master plan, because it was 2016. It was the last time we had the tri-community one. One of the first things, of course, that you would do is we kind of set out the schedule, which we work with David Jurassic on, of how we would kind of break it into three different parts. The first part is really trying to get the public involvement. And so that you start, like, as Ryan said, with the survey, and then following the survey would be a couple of public activities that we are kind of targeting that would happen during the time period that the survey is outstanding. We took a look at surveys that have been done for not only census, but also in other communities to try to get an idea, you know, as to what we would want to include, as well as going back and looking at what we did in 2016. Now, 2016 was a little different because it was a tri-community one versus City of Saugatuck one. So the one that was most recently done was done by the City of the Village of Douglas. And if you've had an opportunity to look at that, you know, I think it turned out excellent. It's a very good plan. I'm hoping ours can be very similar as far as kind of layout and style as we move forward. When we went through the questions, we really wanted to try to have a number of them at the beginning that gives us a lot more of that demographics, almost like census type of stuff. So we can kind of get a sense as to who are the people who are responding to the survey. And then, as you can see, it's broken into different sections. We expect each of those sections to kind of be a chapter in the master plan. So you're looking at like downtown and economics, you're looking at the, you know, some of the issues. So that's when you see the 8 different sections of the survey. It is related to the chapters that we expect to have in the master plan. I would have to say that this is no surprise to you as you look at it. It wasn't a surprise to Ryan or anybody who's on the planning commission, that the number of questions, while it seems long, you know, was something that we really did deliberate about, and we did try to consolidate a few of the ones to try to get it down, you know, to a more, what I would call more of a reasonable number. It seems like most surveys are between 35 and 40 questions with about a 20 to 22 minute. I've heard when I was talking to some people over at Douglas, they averaged about 24 minutes on their survey, and they had an excellent response where over 80% of those completed who started the survey within their community. But we do have about 10 more questions. And as it's been shown on the Survey Monkey, that they have said if once you get past 30 minutes, you will only have approximately about a 68%. We discussed this at the Planning Commission, and one of the things that everybody felt was that we really wanted to try to make this as complete and get people's thoughts. And that part of our public engagement would have to be really to kind of set out the expectation that this is part of your, almost like, being a citizen. We're hoping that you'll want to participate and that it will take you approximately 30 minutes. And so you're kind of setting the expectation in advance. We've tried to simplify it as much as you can by having the columns with like strongly agree, neutral. So it's a quick kind of like a check mark, that people can be able to do. But now that we've got it together, there's probably only a couple areas, that we had, some discussions on. If you're looking at it, I haven't talked to David yet, but there's probably 2 different places where I think we can consolidate a couple of the open-ended ones, because my goal was to make it less than 50 questions, and we're right now at 51. So if we can consolidate 1 or 2 of these open-ended ones, you'll end up being closer to that 40 or 49 questions, which still I think makes it a very reasonable. Trying to get, I think I told Ryan, when you've got 7 individuals in the room and everybody is kind of reviewing each question and whether or not it's, it's valid or how it should be worded, to get 7 people all to kind of agree is a challenge. I can tell you there's a couple of questions that were in there. Probably question 45 is the one that has the most controversy within the commission, only because it's asking people to really give us their opinion about should consolidations, of public works happen, should consolidations of cities, things that have been discussed in the past. No one wants to try to ruffle any feathers with, townships or Douglas. It was just kind of a thought was, let's find out what the citizens want. Is this something they're interested in? If the answer is no, we get a majority of everybody says, hey, we have no interest in doing that, then it's not even a discussion item moving forward. I hope we can fall back on and say, hey, let's never talk about that again. If we got 80% that said yes, then is it something that we needed to at least look forward, further into? Would just be a data point in the overall master plan. So when it was asked to, bring it in front, as I said in some of the meetings, we've had it in 3 of the packets with the questions. We've had the discussions at all the meetings. So people are somewhat familiar with it. But I understand that, of course, that you may want to be able to kind of take a quick look at it before it would go out, to the citizens and you start hearing about it, from yourself. But I think the Planning Commission has tried to take all that into consideration when we got the approval at our last meeting for David to consolidate this to where it currently stands.
Yeah.
Yes, Russ.
Steve, thanks for being here. So thank you for pointing that question out. So when the Planning Commission put this together, and as a former planning commissioner, I know it's a lot of effort to get to this point. Did you look back at the survey that was done back in 2016 or 2015, just kind of get a sense of what was asked then as compared to what we're asking today?
Right. We did go back, and again, it was somewhat different because it was the correct tri-community, and so you had a lot more input. Actually, and Bobby Gaunt, who you guys all know, who is she was involved not only in the one that was first done in 2005 or 2006, but involved in 2016. She said that if her recollection was the survey for 2016 took about 45 to 50 minutes to complete. There was a lot more of the open-ended. So in asking people kind of their different thoughts. I have not been able to kind of go back and, getting the data on that, but that was her memory. So we were still thinking, that 30 minutes is a little longer than average, but it's less than what they had done previously.
Would they, so these questions in 45, I guess could be considered provocative, the questions that have been asked in the Baby-Hits community, as long as I can remember. Were these questions asked at the last survey? Do you know, or
No.
these? Okay, so these were not. I have to give some thought as to that. My concern of this would be is that the community might imagine that the planning commission or council ultimately is suggesting that these are topics for conversation. And as you've explained it, this is simply just to get a read, right? It's a pulse. What's your pulse on this? And I can think of some other questions we may want to put in this pulse too that are not included, but anyway, that's another topic. So can people save and then return to the survey, or once they start, they have to finish it during that
My understanding is the way that we're going to set it up is that they would be able to, wherever they stop, they would be able to go back into
Right.
there.
Okay, because that'll give people a little bit of a,
Although when I was asking David, I haven't quite figured out how that's going to work. Because, you start the survey, you're not logging in, you're not using a login or a password. So the next time you come to it, how does it know it was you?
probably by the IP address would be my guess.
That's what I'm guessing. So maybe it would be like if you're using the same computer,
Okay.
it would
Right.
pick back up. But that's one of the things that I do have to ask him. 'Cause at first he was saying yes, and then I was thinking about that and I said, well, I know that if I start a survey and then I exit and it's just a generic one, when I come back in, it does, sometimes it doesn't pick up where you left off unless you've logged in and it's actually linked to you, which we're not doing. We do ask, there's a question in there, we asked if they are citizens, at least to give us their street name, not their address, so it can stay, anonymous. And that was primarily just so we can kind of check it against the question where they put 1 through 6 on the map as to where they reside.
When would you like to open and close the survey? What's the plan?
The goal was that we were thinking that we'd like to have it out by the end of August. In a perfect world, it would be out like in a couple of weeks, so like by the 20th or 25th, and then let it run through the middle of October with a public hearing, not a public hearing, but with a public meeting scheduled for sometime towards the last half of September, with the idea that by then we would kind of have a sense as to how many people are taking the survey, if there's issues with the kind of completion. In the public, for first public session, we would actually, David and the commission want to have kind of like 8 different, for the 8 main chapters, we kind of have like little stations and give people an opportunity to talk about each of the questions, and then even encouraging at those sessions that if they haven't completed it, to go ahead and complete. And then after the closing date, which was again kind of targeted at the middle of October, once we have consolidated kind of the responses, to have your second public presentation where we actually go over the findings and then inviting people to come in and see if they kind of agree what their thoughts are, on what we have found before we move into actually starting to write each of the individual chapters.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Go ahead, Chris. Thank you. Hi, Chad. I have a couple of questions, and one of them is concerning the consolidation. Do we need that on there? Because I'm afraid it's going to give people an understanding that we're maybe looking at it. The other thing is, it's open to residents, non-residents. Is there any way to track if somebody does fill that out, that it's a non-resident and they're making a vote for something that won't even include them?
Yes, one of the things that we have discussed is up front where we ask the questions, are you a resident? Are you a resident of the tri-community? Are you Allegan County? Are you outside of Allegan County?
Be a tourist.
Is that we will track those differently as to how how their responses came through. Because on some of the questions, it will make very much of a difference,
Okay.
if they are tourists. And that always kind of became part of the question also, was like, should it be tourist? And at the same time, when it comes to a lot of the questions that are in there, it is important to kind of understand what they want. But that's where those opening questions are really important for us, because when we start looking at what's best for Saugatuck and its citizens, we really want to look at what did our citizens say first? Then what did the community say? And so you're going to look at the responses based upon each of those categories, with heavier weighting on those that are citizens. Then it goes to the tri-community. And truthfully, once you get into Allegan and outside of Allegan, as far as I'm concerned, they're kind of viewed the same as almost.
No,
to me
I
as a
just wondered
tourist.
if it would detract from the real goal of it, to kind of focus on consolidation and maybe have that take off in a way we don't want it, but be that as it may, my other question is on page 76. These are number 10 priorities and 47 rank the top overall priorities for the city of Saugatuck. Now, everybody knows that I am not computer illiterate. I don't understand how you're going to rank that with those things.
The way it works is that you click on the arrow, like there's an up arrow and down arrow next to each one of the items. And so if you want that to be your number 1, you click the up arrow until it shows up in the number 1 slot.
Okay.
And then so it's a process where you're actually just clicking up and downs until you get them listed in the order of,
You change them? if you hit the wrong number and.
Yes, you can until you submit.
And then my last thing, well, not the last, I thought it was great. You got the chicken question. My recommendation would be make sure to have a plan so that we get real community input. And even if that's like a half page in the commercial record for 3
Correct.
weeks running, so that people realize this is a big deal and you really need to do it. Other than that, good work.
And I agree with that. That's one of the things that I have a note for our next meeting and my next talk with David was to find out if we can actually, if we have whatever it costs to run, an ad. If not, then I was going to try to draft a letter to the editor when we get ready to issue this and just talk about why we're doing it, the importance of it. The email that's going to be going out, I've asked for, more of an explanation in the email itself of what is an overall master plan. There's a lot of citizens who really don't even know, exactly what a master plan is. I mean, like if you look at the city of Douglas one, they have a whole first page that kind of talks about, what it is, but it also the importance of it. And so I think it does need to be something where it's on our website. It would be in our communications, that we send out. The paper, some people tell me they don't read the paper. I was thinking, we'd want to try to get it in like the social media, like on the Sagavilles and the different ones, the links like we've kind of done in the past, try to, and the importance of it, of course,
Radio
would be
shows.
necessary.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
Any other discussion?
I have to say, I do agree with Councilmember Gardner's comment about comparability to past surveys. And I think the more we could, I'm very comfortable with an increase of questions and getting more feedback. But I do think the stuff that I really look at closely, like when we do our strategic planning, are, trends over time. So I think that was a good thing to point out, to try to maybe put weight on questions we've asked before and to have some kind of comparable data on. And I don't know if this has been done prior to 2016 or not, but to be able to show over time if
Really.
priorities among or sources of concern have changed among respondents.
What we found was in the 2016 where the big differences was because of being tri-community, there's a lot about land use and development, which we really don't have when we narrow it down to just the city of Saugatuck.
Yeah.
So like a lot of those questions, have kind of gone out. There were some of the things that related more to like walking downtown and the retail that really relates to more of our city, and that wasn't in, the prior one. So there's a number of questions that are in here that are now, we felt, important because it's the city of Saugatuck.
Okay.
Versus the ones that were previously in there because it related more to the township or to the city of Douglas.
Okay.
But no, and I think again, if there's ones that are in there, that, like you said, some of the ones that were maybe are more controversial, I could tell you those are the ones that we all kind of questioned. I saw earlier, which I don't think she dropped off. I saw Kathy was on there and I could not, I'm already expecting before it goes out, I want to reach out to both Township and Douglas, let them know that these are just, talking points with our citizens. They're not getting a letter from us saying, hey, we decided.
Right.
Yeah, it's just a data point. We're trying, we're not generating an insurrection or anything, right?
Okay.
We're just trying to find out where people's minds are at and thank Chairman Mans for giving such an eloquent description of what's been a long process, but there's been a lot of dialogue that's gone into all these questions, to the structure of this, how it's mechanically going to work. We've all struggled with finding that balancing point between, are we going to start losing respondents because we're asking too much questions, or are we going to lose data by not trying to shorten this up? So, fortunately, we have Chairman Mans. We also have a great planner that's been giving us pointers and recommendations. And I think we kind of found a really good middle ground. So
Okay.
a lot of work's gone into it.
Yeah.
And I think we're really close. And yeah, we all struggled with those last few questions around that, but it'd be good if we can get them.
We won't know until we actually
Ask 'em.
get it out.
Well, we certainly appreciate the Planning Commission working so hard on all of this, and let's just hope our citizens really take advantage of it and take that survey.
Exactly.
All right,
Very
Steve,
good.
thank you so much.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Steve.
being here.
Okay, we are moving on to public comment. This can be on anything, so if anyone in the audience wishes to speak, feel free to come on up. Steve,
Well, I'm here.
welcome back.
Steve Mans, 568 Wyrick Drive. In regards to the deer calling and that, I would highly encourage that, yes, with the ordinance allowing for, people to be able to get individuals as well as private property. I can think of, and I'm talking just personally, since we butt up to the dune grass as well as Shorewood, like we have just under 5 acres. I've had numerous people who have asked me in the past, could they hunt our property? I can tell you at any given time right now, like what used to be 5 to 7 deer about 5 or 6 years ago that come through the place at night, it's like 30 to 40. There's a parcel of property that's right on Manchester that they took a house down, they put kind of like a park now. Any given night, you can drive through there and see anywhere from 12 to 20, deer. Now again, now that one, in my opinion, just as speaking, I think 3 acres or less to me is too risky. Even for a private citizen. One reason I would say, like for us, I could say that if Dune Grass was doing it, or between Dune Grass and our property is that whole preserve that got put into place. Which is kind of, I don't know if that's public land or how that really works, but could that be? Catherine Page's property is just down the road from us. That's like 15 acres that butts up against the whole Dune Grass Preserve. I could see that if there was going to be something done, trying to get the owners that have those larger properties, and again, there's really only 2 or 3 of us, that butt up against it, that would kind of also be able to participate and allow for it. I'd like to see at least that option. I'd like to see it as hunters. I've got 2 people in my family that are professional deer hunters, and they would love to come up, and participate. If somebody said, are you willing to put in, $700 for each deer for a cull? I'd be like, that's tough, that if it was something where we're allowed to do it privately. So that's just, as you're looking at it, definitely, hopefully you'll give it the option that if there's a group doing it, the neighboring properties, if they're large enough, could also participate. Thanks.
Steve.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Steve.
Anyone else in the audience?
Hello, everyone. For the record, my name's Kevin Tringali, as you know. I'm reaching out as the owner of Bella Vita Vacation Rentals at 133 Butler Street, and I'd like to address 2 recent timing violations related to short-term rental renewals that you may be aware of from a recent letter from a rental owner of ours at 534 St. Joseph. For 2 decades, I've operated a local business with a strong commitment to professionalism and integrity. It has always been my priority to maintain a reputable establishment that reflects positively on our community. During this past winter, one of our main objectives in preparing for the upcoming season was to develop a comprehensive organizational plan for conducting STR renewal applications on the properties we manage. Regrettably, we made 2 clerical mistakes, one involving a misunderstanding of an email, and the other was incorrectly recorded as a deadline date. Recognizing the implications of these clerical errors have made the past few days among the most challenging of my professional career. I'm embarrassed, and I regret that these oversights were not identified earlier by my team or our stakeholders. First and foremost, I want to sincerely apologize for the oversight that led to these violations. We did not intend to violate city ordinances, and as a former member of the short-term rental task force, I fully recognize the significance of maintaining standards that serve the interests of our entire community. I recognize that the purpose of these ordinances are not punitive, but rather to support and preserve the character of our neighborhoods, facilitate coexistence with short-term rentals, and reinforce our status as a premier tourist destination. The 2 properties affected by this matter have maintained an excellent reputation within the respective neighborhoods and have not encountered an ordinance violation. And for over 9 years, it is my understanding that this penalty would take away the rights for the property as an STR may be unlawful. That said, I respectfully ask council to consider leniency regarding the consequences outlined in the notice. The punishment does not fit the crime due to these clerical errors of which we have all made at one time or another. This was a first-time unintentional error due to a busy transition period. Like other violations, council has the power to make a common-sense decision on these circumstances. based on how this happened. Perhaps a fine of some sort or temporary suspension as outlined in 9961, which is the duty to remedy violations, is more suitable. As a local business owner, I care deeply about being a positive part of this city. We have always tried to maintain a good standing with the community and city officials, and we're committed to making sure this type of issue does not happen again. We have already taken corrective actions. I understand the need for accountability and appreciate the city's role in maintaining standards. I simply ask for consideration in reducing to a fine or reducing the suspension, given the circumstances. And of course, cooperation and compliance. Thank you.
Kevin, thank you.
Thank you,
Kevin.
Anyone else in the audience? Anyone else online? If you want to raise your hand if you wish to speak. I don't see any hands raised. Okay. That will close public comment. So we will move on to council comments. Joe, do you want to start this time?
Yeah, I just want to, make sure that we recognize our wildlife committee for taking a really tough task and coming forward along with recognizing our great legal team, right? Putting together an ordinance that kind of makes sense. It's good to see everyone on the council kind of come together and realize that, not only we're taking some baby steps here, but also putting, maintaining the responsibility of within the council, whatever we do to kind of take further steps, right? We can do that, have good visibility on, and while still allowing flexibility and allowing people to come in and do these targeted calls. So I really think it was a good discussion. But I especially want to thank, the committee for really taking on a tough task. And that's about all I had.
All right, Joe, thank you. Gregory.
Yeah, thank you. Steve coming up and talking about, the larger properties when you're getting it over 3 acres, that kind of bends me a little bit more to allow hunting. But although I don't appreciate or I don't support hunting here in the city of Saugatuck, I will suggest everybody to hunt for those bargains on Thursday, August 21st, where we'll have the sidewalk sale and remind all the business owners to sign up for that. And that's all.
Thanks, Gregory.
Just to address Mr. Tringale's comment, I think everyone needs to know, and most of you probably do, Rakesh Rocky is my neighbor at 534 St. Joseph. This is the first I've heard about the issue when it was put into when Ryan sent the note around. Well, as I can't speak to all the circumstances, I can say Rocky did inform me of his change of personal circumstance last year, although this issue with who the certificates were going to, his former spouse was unknown to me. So I just want to make everybody on council aware that that this is my neighbor. And I can vouch for what he is describing in his letter in terms of his change in personal circumstance. So I just want to be clear about that.
Russ.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to acknowledge the great work the DPW did on the sign out at the Y, the Saugatuck sign. I think I would make a motion that becomes the permanent sign with the lighting that's coming in. It's a very good idea. So it's a very, I think, responsible way to take care of the issue with that missing sign. Also, too, you saw the email regarding the New York Times recognition of Oval Beach. I've lost count of the number of times we received recognition. I did email the city manager, and we do have the Oval Beach strategy, which is on our list of things that we want to try to accomplish. I would suggest that we make that a priority and figure out a way to get that done, because there will come a time where if we don't do this, that will no longer be the beach that it is. I mean, it just gets so much use and attraction that we should really make that is a yearly priority to evaluate the end of the season, what went well, what didn't. I've already suggested we have a workshop item in September to do that. But again, that recognition reminds me that we need to be more strategic about how we approach and invest in that property going forward. So it remains the asset that it's going to continue to get the recognition, because that can stop. I do want to thank Kevin Tringale for coming today and explaining his story, and everybody saw the email. So, a unique situation. I hope we can maybe find a way to help. Thanks.
I would like to just echo everything that was said about the different items that we've discussed. I did have the opportunity to be on a radio station and somebody asked me, well, what does a city council person do? Well, if you look at this agenda, we're into hunting, we're into weddings, we're into fireworks. I mean, we are hit with so many different items and I just appreciate the fact that this council can move smoothly through them. And I'm real happy to be working with Chip again. He did an outstanding job. I will say that when I did it, we had an archway as opposed to just the wrapping, but that's okay.
Okay, I don't have anything else to add, so could I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Second.
All those in favor say yes?
Yeah.
Motion approved.